Hello and welcome to my video talking about the basics of roofing. And this is roofing for asphalt shingles on a simple A-frame roof. That means this roof has no hips and it has no valleys, it just has a ridge at the top. It doesn't have any vents in it and it doesn't have any jacks for the pipes to stick out. We're not going to go over any of those details, we're just going to show you the absolute basics in case this is something that you can repeat on a pavilion of your own or a shed or any other A-frame type roof that you might want to put together. We're going to keep this video succinct, but we do have to talk about all of the materials that you're going to need and the process of getting it all ready and set up. We'll do that on the ground. All right, so let's talk about the materials. And probably the most obvious one are these right here, which are bundles of the asphalt shingles themselves. They're sold in square feet. 3 of these packages typically, you'll have to check with the manufacturer, but 3 of them typically is 1 square. And 1 square is 100 square feet. The pavilion that I'm going to roof today is 320 square feet total. So I ordered about 3 2/3 of a square of this roofing material. In addition to that, we have this underlayment. You might call that roofing felt or tar paper. In this case, I'm actually using a synthetic version, which is a little bit lighter. You have to get the same amount of square feet coverage off of that roll. Now that roll does 10 squares, so I have plenty. I'll have some left over. The same amount that you would get here. So for me, the 320 square feet, a little bit more. There are 2 special kinds of these asphalt shingles. This one right here is called starter. This is what we're going to put on the very first row. You need to know how long your structure is, or how long the eave portion of your structure is, which is the bottom of the roof. In my case, that's 20 feet. So 20 feet twice is 40. So I have to have 40 feet of this. This is the ridge cap. This will go on at the very end, at the very peak of the roof. And I needed 20 feet of this. In addition to that, we have to have some flashing. Some people skip the flashing, but I think it's a really bad idea. This flashing here is called drip cap. It has this little edge on it right here, which tries to drip the water away so it doesn't go down the side of your building or any of the structure of your building. We need enough of this to handle both the amount with the starter, because it goes underneath the starter, so that's 40 feet, and along the gable end, which is the pointed side. So at both ends, I need about 8 feet on one side, 8 feet on the other, and then on the other side, so 8 feet times 4. These come in 10-foot lengths. So I've gotten 4 of them for the gable ends, but I've gotten an extra one for the eave side, the bottom portion of the roof. And the reason for that is even though it covers 20 feet with 2 10-foot sticks, in the middle you actually want to have an overlap over them of 6 to 8 inches. So I needed one more piece that I could cut out and make sure I have the proper overlap everywhere those joints happen. Beyond that, all you really need are some roofing nails, a roofing coil gun nailer, which you can rent if you don't own one, and you're going to need a knife to cut through the shingles and set them to different sizes. They make a special kind of knife that you can put into your utility blade that will cut through these. With these, has a little hook on it. I usually don't bother, especially on small jobs. I'll show you how to do it with a regular utility knife. That's about it for the materials. Other than that, you need an air compressor and some ladders. For safety reasons, certainly if you're working on way up high or on something very steep, go ahead and get some roof jacks, go ahead and tie yourself in. On a 612 pitch, 1 story up, for me, I'm okay just working on top of it. I think that's all for the materials. I'm going to show you on the ground first how these things are set up and prepped. A little bit easier to film, and then we can translate that up to what we do on the roof. Now, before we get to laying this out, I want to make one special note about the underlayment and the way that we attach it. You might need to check with your local code. In fact, you really should check with your local code for everything I'm talking about here. In some jurisdictions, they require that the underlayment be attached with these button nails so that they go in with a nail, not quite this long, it doesn't have to be this long, but it has to have this cap on it so that you can see where it's attached and this button covers that hole. That's not required everywhere, and my preferred method is instead to use this. This is a hammer stapler. It uses these T50 staples that you load into them and you just apply them by whacking it like it was a hammer. I just put a whole bunch of staples in there, and I find that that does the job for me. So that's what I'm going to do today, but you should double check to see what it is you need to do. Now I'll show you how it's done over here on this flat surface. So let's talk a little bit about the preparation that you need to do for these asphalt shingles before you take them up. Well, most of the shingles will be installed full length. Every single course starts at a different offset, so this particular one might be this far off from the one below it. And the reason for that is that you don't want these edges to overlap, because then you'd lose some of your water protection. The important thing when determining the size of the offset is to actually consult the shingles themselves. Every brand is a little bit different. So one of the few things that I always make sure that I look up in the instructions is how far I need to cut those offsets off. On this one, like most other shingles, it actually tells me that in the various courses that I need to run here on the back of the shingles, it tells me that I do a full length one on the first run, and then I trim off 6 inches, and then I trim off 11 inches, and then I trim off 17 inches, and then I start again with the full course. So we're going to follow that particular advice. You should look up on your own shingles what they have to say. Sometimes they'll be on the back like this, but at a minimum they will have a QR code on the back that you can scan and go online to figure out what that offset is. Okay. So what I like to do, because we're going to be doing this several times, is cut quite a few of them at those offsets and just have them ready for when I'm roofing, so I don't need to stop what I'm doing roofing and cut those with each and every row. I'll just have a stack of them ready to go. So if we're going to do 6 inches, let me show you how I do it. The first one here is at 6 inches. Right there, I'm going to take this one and put it up to that spot so that I know what square is without having to get out any special tool. And then I just score the back with a regular utility knife. It doesn't go all the way through. All you have to do is bend it like that once or twice, and it comes right off. Now you'll notice these are architectural shingles, so that in some cases there is a double thickness on them. In some cases it's a single. I just cut through a single. If you were doing the same thing through a double, you might have to bend it, and you'd then see exposed that double layer under there. Just take your knife and follow the same cut, score it again, bend it, and that should come off too. So I'm going to start here by making a bunch of these cut off at 6, 11, and 17 inches, and then I'll show you how they'll get laid out. Now here's a couple of tips. After you've cut your first one, by measuring it with your tape measure, you don't have to do that again. This was the cutoff piece on the second row. I can simply align that to the end, and I use the square factory edge as my scoring line, and just go along that, and I can repeat for everything there. It's a much quicker process. Also, let me show you where you have to make an adjustment when there's 2 layers. You see how I've cracked this one here, but on this side there's this double layer, so it's not going all the way through. I just kind of fold it over like that, score that side just like I did the top, and then it pops right off. One other thing I should let you know, if it's really, really cold outside, these things will feel like they're frozen together. You can usually get them apart simply by lifting it up and just kind of bending it to crack it apart. More importantly, if it's a very hot day, you're going to have to deal with this strip right here, which is a tar which is designed to stick itself to the shingle that's underneath it. The problem is it will stick itself also to your floor, to your ceiling, to the other tiles. So you will notice on this tile that it has 2 different sides to it. One is this tar side, and one is this kind of plastic strip that's on there. So what you want to do when you're stacking them together is make sure that the tar side goes on top of the plastic side on the other end, and then its tar side will be on the plastic here. So when you're stacking them together, go end to end like this, underside down, underside up, and lay them together like that. Then when you put one piece on top of here, you're going to put the top side on top of the top side, and you just repeat that all the way up. The other thing to note is that this bottom piece has the top side facing down so that I don't have the tar sticking either to my roof up there or to this down here that I'm working on. All good tips. I'm going to keep cutting until I have a good stack of each of these sizes. The last step in the shingle preparation phase is your starter. Now this looks like one tile, but it's actually not, it's two. It's perforated on the back, and you just fold it like that, and that's your starter strip. Oops. The interesting thing about it is that it has this tar here on that facing outside. This part goes at the bottom, and you hope that the layer above it sticks to that. Now, because these particular shingles are roughly the same size as those, if not exactly the same size, you have to either stagger the very first row of shingles or you have to stagger your starter, which means it's typically easier to stagger your starter. So I just come in a certain amount. I could use this 11 inches, but somewhere around there, and I just cut it like that and take that out. So that's all the pieces that we're going to need to put them up there. We've cut everything to size to get us started. Let me show you how it's laid out up here. We're going to pretend that this is our roof. This right here, this last step, is going to be the bottom edge, the eave, and the ridge will be up top. And that edge right there, alongside where the pool is, that will be one of our gable ends on the side. I'm going to set up the camera over there and show you how these things get put in place. Now, my dad is the one who taught me how to roof. And he told me the most important rule about roofing is to think like water and what water would do. And with that in mind, we're going to start with this flashing. This flashing goes at the very bottom of the roof. This here is the eave. And we put it on first because everything's going to start stacking up on top of it. The thing that's furthest down needs to be the most towards the bottom because we want everything to kind of try and roll the water off of it without getting to the layer beneath. So what you do with this flashing on the eaves is you just set it up like that. There will be a little bit of an angle to the roof, of course. And then using your roofing nailer, you just simply tack a nail into the roof to hold it down. Now, I'm using 1-inch roofing nails. The reason for that is that my ceiling is 3/4 of an inch thick, and all this material here will give me the other 1/4 of an inch. In many cases, you're roofing on something that has a ceiling beneath the roof itself, and you can allow for those nails to penetrate past the ceiling material, the roofing material, and they won't be seen and it won't be a problem. So you can use something like 1.25 inches, you can use 1.5 inches. In my case, I don't want them to protrude because that's actually a visible surface. So I'm using 1-inch nails, and then when I get to a thicker spot like the ridge, I'll convert over to 1.25 inches. But what that does also mean is that when I'm nailing this particular one down, this flashing, it doesn't have that 1/4 inch thickness. So where I'm going to put the nails is where the rafters are underneath the roof. That way the protrusion part of the nail will go into a rafter. The next thing that you put in is your synthetic underlayment, or your tar paper if that's what you're using, a non-synthetic version. And the way that works is that you put it on top of the roof and you get it to line up so that this edge here at the bottom follows maybe a 1/4 inch in from the edge of your flashing. You lay that across the whole section there, and as you can see, this one tells you to put the plastic cap nails in these particular positions. The way I'm going to do it is with the stapler, and I'm going to just pepper it with them. Once that's done, you want to put your other flashing on top of the underlayment right here on your gable ends. Now this should go all the way over, and then this should overlap that. So that if the rain does happen to get here, hits the side and comes in a little bit underneath your shingles, it will flow down your underlayment and then hopefully eventually off of the roof. There are lines on this underlayment. In this case, they're at the bottom and the top. And what you're going to want to do is once you put the next layer on, the bottom of that layer, this is the top of this layer, the bottom of that layer will follow this line right here. Pretend that the underlayment is still here. What you're going to do is you're going to start with your starter strip. Here's a full length one. Here's the one that I cut. The one that I cut will go here. That will be right there. The underlayment will be on top of it. And you start with this shorter piece right here. And you just simply follow this line. If you want to, you can make it protrude just a little bit, maybe up to 1/4 of an inch. If you do too much more than that in the heat, it will bend down and stay that way. But you put this one in, and then you put a full piece on, and you just run the entire length of your eave, the bottom of your roof. You put 4 nails in, maybe 2 inches up. And in my case, because it's not very thick, I probably will also have to follow the pattern of the rafters, or I'll have to go grab a 3/4 inch nail to put a few nails in manually. Okay, once that's in, you start with the full piece. The full piece lines up exactly with the edge of that starter and follows it like that. After that, the first one that you cut had a 6-inch trim. It will sit right on top, have the same edge matching that gable end, and the bottom of it here will match the line of this ridge right here, just below this white line, which is your nail guide. So you will have nailed in along that white line 4 times. Check your bundle. It will tell you what the nailing pattern should be. There are some high wind areas where you have to put in more. But in most cases, you need to put in at least 4 staples or 4 nails. And then you line up this one like that. Then you go to the next size down. This is why I have a whole stack of these. Line this one up like that. And this one like that. And I tend to work in diagonals. I don't do one full row and then come back and start another. I work in a diagonal like this. I then take a full piece. It goes there, and you follow more full pieces all the way up until you can put a full piece in the next row that goes just above this one. And then you would start with one this size, and this size, and you just keep repeating all the way up. All right. I'm going to be doing the first 2 or 3 rows here from ladders on the ground. It's just a little bit easier. You have to reach pretty far when you're sitting up on a slope trying to do the ends. But let me, before I do that, tell you one thing about your nail gun. In almost all cases, your stapler has 2 settings. On mine, it's shown here on the trigger with this red button. I push it out and I twist it in order to change the setting. One of the symbols for the settings has 3 nails on it, and the other has 1. When it's set to the 1 setting, that means when you pull the trigger, only 1 nail is going to come out. When it's set to the multiple nail setting, that means that you can hold the trigger down and push the gun down to fire it multiple times per trigger pull. While I'm working on the flashing, I want it set to 1 nail per pull of the trigger. So I'm going to cut this down so that one end of it lines up just past one of these rafters, and I can put a nail towards the end. And I'm going to give it enough room so that when I do cut it, the other end lines up right here on the gable end. I marked that earlier. I'm just going to use these tin snips to cut it out. I cut it square on one side. And then on the other. Now you can see where the last piece ended. I need to overlap that by 6 to 8 inches and make sure that I can put a nail into that rafter at that end. Then this last piece goes on with the same kind of overlap and with the edge matching the gable end on the far side. Now note that there's a little lip on these on this drip cap here. You can actually tuck that underneath and kind of snap them into place together. It looks a little bit better. And that's it for the bottom row. Now, if you were roofing a whole house, you would do this step up on the roof. The supplier of that much material would probably be delivering it all up on the roof, and you would just roll this out up there and cut it to the length that you need. Working with a shed like this, where I've bought the material myself and brought it in on the truck, this is something that I prefer to do, to cut it to length on the ground and then just bring it up one piece at a time. So I've measured the length of my roof here, and I've figured out where that length lines up here on the floor. After I've cut one piece, I simply roll the next one right on top of that one. I can know where it is that I have to start my cut. And just with a utility knife, cut generally straight across. If it's not perfect, that's okay. Just do your best. Now, if you're using tar paper, it's going to work a little differently than what you see me do here. The tar paper is a bit thicker and heavier, and you'll need to roll the whole thing out before you staple it in. With this lighter underlayment, I just took it up into 1/4, put some staples down into that corner, and then moved along, tacking it in at the bottom. As I go along, I try and stretch it out flat, and then I can add more staples into the middle to keep it from moving. The second layer is done much the same as the first. You simply align the bottom edge with that white line from the top of the first layer. And you can see here that I've switched over to using a pneumatic stapler now that I've shown you how the hammer one works. Don't be shy about your use of staples. Alright, now you can see the 2 layers almost made it to the ridge, but not quite. So I'm going to have to put one more layer over it, and it's no problem. I just drape it over like it's the top of a tent, and it goes all the way along and covers both sides. I can either do it right down the middle, or I could actually follow one of the lines with the edge and just have one side be a lot longer. And there you go. I basically followed the line on this side, and you can see it goes way down on the other side, so there's a big overlap. But at this point, the roof is essentially waterproof. It is definitely not windproof. But we'll add the flashing on these gable ends next, and then we'll start with the roofing. Now this is about 8 foot, but the flashing piece is 10, so it sticks way out. But we don't need to cut it off. I simply take it to the end there so it matches up at the eave, come find out where the peak is, and using the tin snips, I just grab a little bite off there to show me where the center is. I'm going to leave that side uncut. I'm going to cut the other end so it bends across the top. And this is what it looks like when it's all installed. You see it just wraps around the top there. It does it twice. That's all the preparation that's necessary before you put on the shingles. And we'll do that next, going along this eave edge using our starter strip. From here on out, the process is much like I showed you on the ground. You take a starter strip like I'm showing here, line it with the bottom, and use your nail gun to put it into place. You then start with the bottom row of the shingles, and I work my way up in a diagonal. You can see the first diagonal has already been installed. The final thing to cover on this simple roof is the ridge. The roofing that you did should go up far enough that the last row actually folds over the top, and this is done on both sides. Once that's done, you're ready to put the ridge in. Break your ridge pieces into the pieces you see here, and then line the first one up with the edge of the gable. The ridge pieces are installed with 2 nails near the tar line. I'm actually showing you a bad example here. They should be moved forward a little bit. Make sure that the nails go both into this top piece and to the piece below it. The other important thing to note is that I am not placing these by eye. I've actually snapped a chalk line, which you can just barely see here, and I'm following that line as I'm placing these down. If you don't do this, your ridge will not look good. Once you get to the very end of your ridge, you're going to have to cut a piece or 2 down in order not to show the part that's not supposed to face up. The very last piece will have 2 nails exposed, and you'll need to use a roofing caulk to get in there and cover those 2 nails. And that's all there is to it. You put a few rows up, you put a nice straight ridge at the top, and you're all done. This job took me about 7 to 8 hours and it covers 320 square feet. I know this is something that's learnable because I actually built 2 of these this summer, one for a friend, one for me. He helped me and I helped him. And I showed him how to put the roof together just like this one, and he got it really quickly, no problem. You could do that too. I hope you enjoyed watching this and maybe you learned enough to get a simple roof done. If you did, take a minute to hit the subscribe button. It helps other people find the content that I create. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.